James Hoggan owns Hoggan & Associates, a leading PR firm here in Vancouver. But he also chairs the David Suzuki Foundation and serves as a trustee of the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education. In addition, he's the co-founder of the influential climate change website Dismogblog and the author of this hard-hitting book, Climate Cover-Up: The Crusade to Deny Global Warming. Tell me about the actual state of the science, because I think we might as well get that out of the way at the start. What are the scientists really saying? Like Naomi Oreskes, for example, you mentioned in the book. What are they actually telling us about climate change?
What I was surprised by was I thought there would be a lot more controversy, but when you started to read reliable sources of information about climate change, what you find is that virtually every major scientific academy in the world, NASA, the Royal Society, the National Academy of Sciences, all agree that the climate is changing, that humans have something to do with it, and that we are going to be having some serious problems because of how rapid the climate is changing. There is a debate about climate change and whether or not it's a problem, but it's not a scientific debate. So here you have this kind of public perception that's really out of sync with what's actually happening in the scientific world. So climate scientists think the climate's changing and that it's going to have big impacts on really important things like food, water, the weather patterns, extreme weather, on sea levels, and certainly on species extinction, and a whole variety of different types of issues. We've never really faced such a serious environmental crisis in our lifetime. So I think it's a very important issue. I look at it as a human rights issue because, unfortunately, the people who are not causing the problem or who have very little to do with the problem, people who live in Bangladesh, Sub-Saharan Africa, are people who are actually going to be more affected by it.
The consensus has become, if anything, firmer in the scientific community. The public understanding of it, particularly in the United States, has become less.
Yes. I was really surprised by it. It started for me with a book. I was reading a book by a guy named Ross Gelpspan, who is an American retired editor of the Boston Globe. And he had written this book on climate change. And he'd been running into climate scientists who thought it was a problem and other scientists who thought it wasn't. And he was actually leaning in the direction of thinking that climate change maybe wasn't as serious a problem as these climate scientists were saying it was. And one of his friends said, I think you should check out this Fred Singer guy who's telling you that climate change isn't such a big problem and see who's funding him. So he started doing some digging and he found out that Fred Singer was taking money from Exxon. And that a number of these other scientists, like Fred Singer, had actually, who were saying that climate change wasn't happening, had actually done similar things in the tobacco industry, trying to convince the public that secondhand smoke was not a health hazard.
Tell me about the Stonehouse Standing Circle, because that sounds to me as though that may be Jim Hoggan's reaction to some of this kind of tension.
I think that there's a need to have more difficult conversations about these issues, because I think there needs to be forums where environmental groups sit down with oil industry people and industry business people and look at ways that you can resolve some of these issues. The thing that I think is a real like a bright light in all of this is what I see is the number of mainstream people who understand, who aren't afraid for business reasons or whatever, to accept the fact that we are actually overdoing it and that we need to figure out a way to reduce our impact on the environment. Those numbers are growing. It's really very impressive, the people that I run into. This is not just a bunch of hippies anymore. This is like mainstream business leaders, government leaders, academics, have all basically, many millions in Canada have come to the conclusion that we are destroying the world around us and we need to do something about it. We need to change the way we interact with the world. And that number is growing, and that's something that people should really be optimistic about, regardless of what you see with public opinion polls.
Gives you a little confidence in human nature. There has been a lot of critical thinking going on and a lot of people paying attention for that to be the case.
Yeah, there's a lot of smart people out there who are devoting a lot of time to exploring ways to fix these problems. And I think, you know, anyone who's ignoring these problems is doing it at their peril these days, because these are the kind of problems that are going to come around to bite you. You know, the climate is changing whether you believe it or not. It's like gravity, you know, you may not believe in it, but when you jump off the diving board, you're ending up in the water, right? So.
The remarkable James Hoggan, author, activist, public relations executive, and purveyor of hope. For The Green Interview, I'm Silver Donald Cameron. See you next time.